All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Nathan, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember McPherson.
Here.
Councilmember Biggs.
Here.
Councilmember Laraway.
Yes.
Council President Bruce.
Here.
Mayor Steer.
Here. And if you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started, a special shout out to Councilmember McPherson for saving the day with his tractor and disc on the fire out to the Butte. So always appreciate your help on those things. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
Butte Fire appreciated that.
I'm looking forward to seeing the video.
No autographs till after.
Yeah.
All right, first item is the consent agenda. Questions or comments? Or motion?
Greg, you have
I'm
anything?
good.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Nathan, would you poll the council?
Councilmember McPherson.
Yes.
Councilmember Biggs.
Yes.
Councilmember Laraway.
Yes.
Council President Bruce.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Next item is public comment. I didn't have anybody sign up. Is there anybody who wishes to address the council? That's two of you. All right, thank you very much. External reports, Ada County Development Impact Fees. Leon, you may have the floor, sir.
All right, thank you, Mayor, council members. Thanks for having me out here. And then just tap the red light and it'll turn the mic on. You just tap it.
Just push the base there.
Okay, awesome. Great, thank you. So yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. Leon Letson, I'm the Community Planning Manager for Ada County Development Services. Had some conversations with at least your mayor in the past about our effort to collect development impact fees. This presentation tonight is a high-level overview of what our ask is. At the end of this, really just seeking your blessing to engage with your staff to explore the adoption process of our CIPs and the impact fees that are associated with them. I'll give you a high-level overview of what those include, and I'll stand for any questions. If it gets too technical or you need a lot more detail, happy to do a follow-up with you whenever is best. Do I just scroll to go to the next? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Let me see if I can expand this. Is there a view option, or does it just stay in the PDF? Okay. All right. Try not to cut off any of my slides. So here's a timeline that, as I was mentioning to the mayor, is a little longer than I would have liked. It started prior to my time at Ada County, but since early 2019, we've been exploring collecting development impact fees for county services that are provided countywide. Those include the jail, the coroner, our EMS group, and then the sheriff. An important distinction for the sheriff is we are not collecting those inside of city limits, as many of you have your own contracts with Ada County Sheriff or your own police force. So we're only collecting those in the unincorporated areas. So in 2020, we hired Galena Consulting. Ann Westcott, if anyone's familiar with her, helped develop our initial set of CIPs and impact fees for the 4 services that I mentioned. In 2021, we received a recommendation of approval from our Impact Fee Advisory Committee to move forward and start the adoption process. Prior to doing that, we wanted to have conversations with each of the cities about what our efforts would involve, and really, this is a situation where we've all got to be rowing in the boat together, because if one jurisdiction opts to not participate, that really kind of changes what the actual collected revenue streams can be. And so we spent about a year, for lack of a better word, doing the dog and pony show on what Ada County development impact fees would be and how we might go about collecting them, what the totals would be, and so forth, and received blessing from the 6 jurisdictions to move forward and start working with their staff. In 2023, based on some comments from one of our city partners, as well as a kind of a suggestion by our legal team, we realized we'd been at this for a while. The Galena Consulting CIPs were a little dated by that time, and we wanted to make sure, based on all the growth and everything else that occurred, that we had the most accurate information that we could have. The good news is our fees actually dropped a little bit. And so that's a function of several things, what was included in the budget, what the expected actual household growth is. Interestingly enough, the more households you have, the lower the impact fee usually is because more people are sharing what that actual fee will be. So it was a combination of just changes to construction costs, changes to household growth and so forth that ultimately resulted in our fees dropping a little bit. So again, in spring of 2024, we had our current version of the CIPs blessed by our Impact Fee Advisory Committee, and those should be part of your packet, or hopefully you've had a chance. They're pretty detailed documents, but we did send those over as a part of the conversation tonight, and I do encourage you to look at them, and if you have specific questions, again, happy to follow up. So now we're in the process of talking to each of the cities and re-engaging and basically asking you to support our request to talk to your staff, talk to your Impact Fee Advisory Committees about the adoption. There's going to be an associated ordinance, similar to what we've done with CUNA Rural Fire. You know, they had their fire district CIPs blessed by you. Once that was done, we took those and adopted them ourselves and also created our own ordinance to collect those fees. So the second phase of the fee collection requires that ordinance, and we're going to try to bring everyone online at the same time so that we don't have a CUNA collecting 6 months earlier than an Eagle or a Ada County doing it, 2 years, hopefully not 2 years, that'd be a terrible timeline, but 6 months before, other jurisdictions. So that'll be phase 2 of this project. In terms of what the purpose of impact fees are, I think you're fairly familiar, but it's really growth paying for growth. You can't use impact fees to pay for existing deficiencies. You can't use impact fees to pay for new staff members. It has to be facilities or equipment-related costs that are expected based on the growth that's going to occur. And this is the state statute, which I won't bore you by reading, but it does talk about, how you're supposed to collect them, what the point of them is, which is to promote orderly growth and development, and make sure that we're doing this in a fair way that, again, one developer isn't paying way more than somebody else, or, someone's paying for something that is technically an existing deficiency. So, in terms of the actual impact fees, a lot of numbers on this slide and the following 4 slides, so I apologize. I'll try to keep it interesting. Ada County Sheriff is our highest fee, and again, you're not really going to be collecting that for us. That's up to us to do that. The jail, the paramedics, and the coroner are going to be the fees that we're going to ask you to collect. In this version of the CIPs, we did break out single family versus multifamily, and you can see kind of a slight difference on some of those in terms of the cost. And we also broke out the non-residential fee between retail, office, industrial, and institutional. And I guess, some of these can get a little big once you start thinking about, 20,000 square foot building or something like that, but we're not seeing a lot of development like that right now. We're seeing a lot of small scale stuff. Some of the bigger projects, though, are going to have a lot more to pay, and we have a process that allows them to approach the county and have a special assessment done if they feel like maybe the fee's not what they want to pay or it's a little out of line with what they've got going on. And that would be the job of our Impact Fee Advisory Committee and the Ada County Board of Commissioners to work through that. In terms of the methodology we use, there's several ways to calculate impact fees, but the 2 that we use basically are either you've got an existing system and you're looking to recover costs. That usually happens in the form of water and sewer systems, or you have an incremental expansion based on a level of service associated with a certain number of, in this case, parkland acres per 1,000 residents. Another way would be maybe jail beds per residence required or things like that. But those are the 2 fees that 2 methodologies we use to calculate the fees that are contained in those reports. And in terms of growth projections, I think CUNA is well aware of this. We're growing fast around here, and we've been growing, and we expect to continue to grow. Up into 2033, we're expecting about a 23% change in the valley population, or about 125,000 new individuals here. We're also expecting quite a bit of commercial square footage. This is based on 1,000 square feet per those uses. So again, growth doesn't seem to be going away. Just driving here today, it's pretty obvious that the valley is still under construction. So trying to get these adopted and online soon so that we can actually start collecting the fees necessary to pay for the services and infrastructure that are necessary to support our future community. And again, this is even more slides with numbers, but these are the things that we're looking to fund with our capital improvement plan and impact fee studies. These are very specific projects that look at things like admin buildings, portions of the sheriff facility. Again, these are not anything collected here. These are only unincorporated. But each of the CIPs contains this level of detail if you guys are really interested in understanding what is this future money gonna be spent on? Again, the jail, that's kind of a big one. As you're all aware, the recent bond barely failed. So now we're looking at things like impact fees as a way to help us expand the jail to serve the future. It's not the only solution, obviously. There's gonna have to be a lot of other things that we bring to the table on that. But impact fees are kind of an important part of how do we get those facilities done. Coroner, this is kind of interesting. We've already got this building. It's under construction. I don't think it's got final occupancy yet. It might. We're actually using the impact fees to pay the financing associated with the creation of that facility because the facility did account for future growth, so therefore it's impact fee eligible. And then EMS, we're looking at new stations, new apparatus, some new equipment. And again, a lot more detail in those reports than you probably want to hear tonight before everything else you have to hear. But happy to follow up and have a more detailed conversation if you'd like. So in terms of our next steps, we're out here talking to the city partners about adopting our CIPs into your comprehensive plans and then eventually establishing those ordinances to collect those fees. We are also going to have an interlocal agreement between the jurisdictions that talk about how we're going to handle not only who's collecting the fee and how the money's transferred, but also things like exemptions, individual assessments, and what happens in the form of an appeal if someone disagrees with the fee that they're assessed. And so that's kind of a TBD in terms of who's going to handle that. We ideally would love to do it for you, so you're not busy or your legal staff's not busy trying to figure that out, but our legal team is still exploring state statute on that to make sure we can actually take that off your plate. But again, that's kind of the future of phase two. So in conclusion, we've got a website up. You're happy to go there. All the CIPs are located there. All the information at a high level of what we're trying to achieve is available. And I will stand for any questions.
Okay, questions? Leo? Yes.
When you're talking about the sheriff's section, it has camera installation. Is that in-jail cameras or ACHD light cameras that are on the intersections?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember, that would be cameras at the facility itself or associated with sheriff buildings. It wouldn't be
Thank you.
traffic signal cameras.
So when you have the disagreements on the fees and stuff like that, does that usually just go to arbitration or something like that, or do they go full-blown lawsuits or something? If it's
No,
they can't
usually,
force them or-
yeah, I mean, enforcement in the sense that we don't issue a permit if they don't pay the fee.
Right.
So what happens is they currently, like with the fire districts, they'll make an appeal to the fire district to have them review it. And then depending on the nature of the appeal or if it's an exemption, there's a final deciding body. Sometimes it's the Board of County Commissioners, sometimes it's the fire district themselves. But that is kind of, it's very similar to like if your director or P&Z had an appeal filed of one of their decisions, the council here would make the ultimate decision as to what's gonna happen here. I think the majority of those are gonna get kicked to the Board of County Commissioners, but that, again, that's kind of a phase two as to who's gonna be busy with that type of work. Because it is our service and, we're asking you to collect those fees for us, we're working hard to keep that off your plates and basically just allowing you to direct them to us to say, hey, go figure it out with the service provider and whatever they say is probably what we're gonna ask you to do. But that's how we would handle it.
Thanks.
And then one thing, I don't know if you maybe already talked about it or not, but we're building a lot of those commercial shell buildings, so we don't know at the time of building permit if they're gonna be a retail or if they're gonna be an office or if they're gonna be a restaurant or what they're gonna be until later. So we'll have to just work out some way of determining how to make that fee.
Yeah, and I would assume there'd be a subsequent tenant improvement application that would have an associated building permit that would nail down the use so we could explore the impact fee required at that time. That's not uncommon to do those shell and core buildings and flesh them out later.
Okay, good.
I have a
All right,
question.
further questions? Yeah, Mark?
Sorry, Leon, I'm Mark, I'm the city attorney. I was curious, because, and obviously with fire districts, we have, here an agreement with the fire district to collect their impact fees because they can't pass ordinances. So I'm trying to make sense of this a little bit, I'm assuming it's something your team has vetted, like, you're asking us to adopt it, is that because county ordinances aren't effective in the city?
Right.
Is that what the idea is? Okay.
Yes, sorry, Mayor and Mark. Sorry, I'm trying to do Robert's Rules of Order here. That's definitely not my strong suit, so I apologize. But yes, state statute doesn't allow us. So ACHD, if you're obviously familiar with them, they've been granted state authority to collect a fee within their area, and it doesn't require this process. Unfortunately, county jurisdictions like ours doesn't have the same allowance with the state statute to just pass an ordinance and say, you're just gonna participate in that and we're good to go. You guys don't have an individual ordinance for ACHD in terms of the collection of fees and different things things like that. So that is kind of the tough part about this, is we have to have you adopt our CIPs into your comp plan, and then we have to have you establish an ordinance for us. And then that's where the interlocal agreements figure out how you're gonna get the money to us and so forth. We are working on model ordinances and model resolutions for you guys to refer to as you explore that part of it. But that is probably the one hiccup in this one thing, is state law doesn't give us broad authority like ACHD to just establish this and everyone just has to automatically get on board.
Well, and I guess the reason I'm asking is because the thing that you're different though than like a district is you do have ordinance authority. It's just, it sounds like the limits don't allow it within our boundaries and.
Right.
And so I guess when I look at that, I ask the next question of like, we're confident, your team's confident that we can still, even though you have separate ordinance authority, that you can still go for intergovernmental agreements within, and that, like, within our boundaries. That's actually within the confines of the act.
Yes, that is correct. And there's a couple of counties that have done this across the state. I believe it was Teton County over in eastern Idaho that has effectively established something like this, where they've worked with the local jurisdiction to collect that fee for them, and they've created that agreement. But this is kind of an untested thing in the state of Idaho. There aren't a lot of counties that have tried to do this.
Okay.
As the most urbanized county with a lot of money going to services, we kind of thought it was right to give it a shot. But it is a little untested in terms of how these things actually work. And so that's why, again, talking to staff, talking to the legal teams to make sure everyone understands what's in these agreements, how's this going to work, who's going to talk to who when there's an appeal request or an exemption request or things like that, so.
Okay,
I have
yes.
a question. Will this offset any of the current fees that are being collected on the public, or are they just another bucket?
These are new fees, yeah, so, there will be, yeah, if you have existing contracts with, say, the sheriff's office or other service providers, we've again tried not to double dip in any of those, particularly the sheriff, I think, was one of the most glaring examples where I think we serve Eagle, I believe I apologize for not knowing off the top of my head, but
No worries.
I believe we work closely with, yeah, so for that reason, we were like, we're just gonna completely pull those off and not jump into that with the incorporated jurisdictions, because again, then you have a Boise that has its own police force and different things like that, so we really had to play that one carefully.
And have you spoken, I'm sorry. Have you spoken with any of the development community about adding these fees, or have you seen any pushback, or you?
Yeah.
Because I think we'll have, what, ACHD, fire, police, now
I know,
Ada
yeah.
County.
Yeah, Councilmember President, yes, it is, or Mayor President, sorry, it is, we have talked to the DCA. Thankfully, Dave Jorgensen and Chris Finley are on our DFAC for us and had a lot of conversations about this. We've seen positive reception, but we also, I'm aware that everyone has increased their fees lately to the point of almost 100% increase in some situations. Boise has done a lot with that. I know CUNA Fire just had a pretty substantial increase. So yeah, I imagine it's probably not going to be as popular as it was the first go around when we had those conversations, but we have heard they're okay paying for growth so long as they know clearly what the fee is, how it's calculated, and that they have an option for a special assessment or an exemption or things like that.
They probably haven't been talking to the schools that way, huh? Right,
I'm not privy to that, but I am aware that schools have been talking, so.
yeah. And then the other thing, there was a recent court ruling about impact fees. That wouldn't impact anything that we're collecting with it. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that off the top of my head, so that would be,
Mr. Mark?
happy to.
I'll find it and send it to you.
I'd love to hear it too, obviously, we're working very closely with Ada County legal staff to keep this all in a good place, so.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, anything further? No, thank you. All right, thank you very much. We
All right.
appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And I guess just to confirm, we can start talking to your staff.
That's what I was gonna ask. Do you need?
Yeah, we'll get-
You don't need a motion, just a thumbs up is,
No, because we're just going to start the conversation when it comes time to adopting, and
Then we'll go through it.
have an action item for that.
okay.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have no public hearings. I know that makes everyone sad.
Oh, so hoping there would be.
Tentative budget, Jared Empey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jared Empey, City Treasurer. So last month, we kind of went over the basics of the budget for fiscal '25, kind of where we sit as a city for fiscal '24. And overall, before you is what we call the tentative budget. This is the budget that we set prior to the passage of our final budget, which is noticed to the public in August. In the past, we had always passed it in September. However, we moved it ahead due to noticing requirements and making sure that we meet all of those adequately. The tentative budget that you have before you is essentially, in all material respects, the same that you reviewed last month with the budget workshop. There were a few adjustments. Overall, the spend only changed 0.08% from what we discussed last month. So for instance, there was some change in estimates. So when we start developing a budget, we get estimates, and then those get finalized as the budgeting process progresses. For instance, Ada County Sheriff's, the estimated COLA changed from 3 to 4%. The CPI numbers that we calculate COLA came in, and we had originally estimated 3.64, and that got revised down to 3.33. Then our AIC membership went up about $1,100 from what we had estimated. There were some payroll changes that are minor and always occurring. Then there was a capital expenditure change. Given that the council approved a contingency request for the senior building to do some remodeling and refresh there, we transferred those funds to make some improvements on the VFW building on Main Street. And then there was some other minor requests, such as parks training, locate equipment, training budget within the Economic Development Department, and water subscriptions increased so that we could continue using our Neptune 360 program, which is used to capture remotely water readings per month, as opposed to having the guys drive around like they used to several years ago to collect those monthly readings. And so overall, as I stated, the overall spend was essentially the same, as it only changed by 0.08%. The budget overall is still $112 million overall for the city. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Okay, questions for Jared?
Yes. We briefly talked to you a little bit about the sewage plant budget. And I know this is everything from last year, but projection-wise, and this might be a good question for Adam, and I know he hadn't been here long, but is there a line item for accidents that happen, like new pumps, liners, trucks? Is there a budget line at that, or does that all just get pulled out of general fund?
Yeah, so good question, Councilman Laraway. So every year, Bobby puts together an assessment for vehicles that we need to have replaced, and we cycle through those. So those are generally accounted for. That said, pumps that go out, we have a line item for that under water, sewer, and irrigation. So I believe in water, there's a line item reserved for $200,000. In sewer, it's $200,000. In irrigation, it's $100,000. So that we know that, we can't necessarily always predict when a pump is going to go out, or when a significant piece of machinery is going to go out, or when electronics fail. We know that those are just going to happen, and so we just budget for the fact that it will. And so those are in the budget as it is today, and it doesn't come out of the general fund.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I think he was talking about some of the pumps that had aged out. Did we look at, for the sewer department, I think there were liners and pumps that we replaced over the last budget cycle that We knew they were on their last leg, but we didn't budget for them. And I think they came and asked for them at year 13 when they go bad at year 13. Have you had a chance to look at any of that stuff that maybe need to be replaced that we should put in this budget that you see, or?
Yes, thank you, President Bruce. I have discussed what's been in the budget up until now with the staff. The liner in question has been budgeted. That is an item that's already in there. And future pump failure expectations is also in there. How that one caught us off guard, I couldn't speak to. Maybe it failed prematurely. Maybe there was some other operational issue that caused it. I couldn't speak to that prior to my time, but that is going forward budgeted in there.
Okay, thank you.
So, I have a question, when you're normally budgeting, looking at preventive maintenance and that sort of thing, keeping parts on hand, what is the typical time frame that you budget out for something like a pump? If it has a shelf life of 10 years, and we had this case where we paid for a couple that were in excess of $1 million, in contingency, so I'm just kind of wondering, how far ahead do you look on those types of things, so that you don't have a situation, I guess, like that? I mean, it's one thing to be beyond life, which is what these were, but if you're getting close, I mean, I'm just wondering about how far ahead, because some of these are pretty high dollar items.
All right, thank you, Councilman Biggs. I cannot speak to that authoritatively enough at this point, not having been in the budget process long enough, but it is my intent that we do look at the entire projected life of these pumps and ensure that they are being planned out in years as they go. So each year we can put money towards that with the anticipated failure rate of 10 years or whatever it might be. Jared, anything else for that?
Yeah, so Councilman Biggs, just to kind of chime in, so in general, we budget for pumps to last about 10 years, and so they're depreciated over that lifespan. I think that's probably a good metric for budgeting for those. That said, I think the item that you're referring to that was about $1 million wasn't just a pump, it was a pump and a retention pond, and so that's why that was that dollar amount, is it was actually purchasing and creating a whole new pond.
Well, I
The
think
one
there
I
was
was talking about was there were two of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, there was a pump and a pond and then a pump. It had been ongoing, so I look forward to seeing what you come up with. I'm assuming it'll be the capital plan for what you need, so.
Yes, President, absolutely.
Oh, so in my time there, one of those pumps that we had to replace, we didn't have the parts ability to rebuild that. So we looked into what that would take to have those parts on the shelf, and we have those parts now so that we can actually do a rebuild. Some of those parts, though, have a shelf life where they can't sit there dry too long or the seals will get hard and crack. And so careful about the way we do that, but we did get some supplies in, so there's some wear plates and some seals that aren't readily available, so we get those in so that those pumps can be rebuilt without having to buy a whole complete expensive pump.
Yeah, I think that's what we did, bought a rebuild kit and a pump so that we had one on the shelf, so.
Right.
And one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
And just for my education, are all the pumps in the city the same?
Councilman Laraway, no, that'd be fantastic. We try to at least keep the same brand of pump, because that can have some consistency with ordering and quantities, savings through quantity ordering. The style of pump, the use of pump, all vary enough that, they're not even remotely the same.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's the 100 horsepower pumps and the 400 horsepower pumps. Those variations also, but we do try to keep everything common as we can.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, one
Further
more
questions?
question. For Jared. I know the previous budget, we had the ARPA funds and we had the meta impact fee funds that were in the budget. I was assuming our budget would go down, but it looks like it went up from last year, even though we don't have those funds to spend anymore. Is that correct?
So, Councilman Laraway, sorry, President Bruce. So you're correct that the overall budget did increase. So as I look at this, our budget from last year was 106 million, and this year it's 112 million. The reason for that increasing is, so when we make a budget, it's a spending plan. And so last year we were very conservative as to how things were going to go development-wise. It looked like the economy was going to be really shaky this year, and so we budgeted very conservatively accordingly. However, this year it seems like the economy has recovered a little bit, and so for that reason, it's increased slightly. I mean, that's probably what it's hard to say what increase that is, but on the fly, but I imagine that that's probably a 3 or 4% increase based on the fact that it went from 106 to 112, so.
Well, and I think my concern, if I may, Mr. Mayor, was that we took out the ARPA funds, but yet we're still spending the same amount. So we replaced those, rather than the budget going down, we raised our budget. I don't know what the difference would be, but that was just my thought process, is that it would go down.
Yeah, so, President Bruce, so if we look specifically at the grant fund, so the grant fund was, it's probably the most variable fund that we have in terms of overall spend. So for instance, if you look specifically at the grant fund, that fund did go down. And that's where we would have budgeted for ARPA funding and where we would have budgeted for that sort of spend. However, if you look at fiscal '25, it went down to 4 million, whereas in fiscal '24 it was at 12 million. So in that respect, it did decrease.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes. I have one more question for you. The pace of growth, do we have a projection on what that is over the next year for CUNA?
Councilman Biggs, so to answer your question, I believe that growth will continue over the next year. I've actually projected that it'll increase slightly from what this year is, so I think that growth will be positive over the next year.
So I guess I'm trying to think budget-wise. If the pace of growth outpaces the budget, that will actually be a net better for the current residents. Okay, it's one way to look at it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? All right,
Thank you, Jared.
thank you. Next item is Watch Me Grow written decision letter, Nathan Stanley.
Mayor, we need to have a motion on the last item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Approve the tentative budget.
Yeah, so we need a motion to approve the tentative budget.
And we still, I asked prior that we'll still see it again next month, so if you had any more questions, they can come to you.
Yes, and then there will also be the budget public hearing, so.
Right. Make a motion that we approve the tentative budget as published.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Now Watch Me Grow written decision letter, Nathan Stanley.
Mayor, council members, Nathan Stanley, City Clerk, 751 West 4th Street. Before you is just the decision letter that will be sent to the owner of Watch Me Grow based on the revocation hearing that we held last meeting.
And then we have received no,
Yeah, I haven't received any contact from the owner, just seeking your approval for the letter and mayor's signature to send out.
And still, the state hasn't met the state permit either.
No.
I make a motion that we approve the Watch Me Grow written decision letter and approve the sending of it.
Second.
motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Nathan.
And ordinances, consideration to approve ordinance 2024-15 for Vasilili Olinek rezone. a municipal rezone ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cuna, making certain findings and rezoning certain real property to wit Ada County Assessor's parcel numbers R 8977340100, R 8977340200, and R 8977340300, owned by Basil Olenek, situated in the corporate city limits of the City of Cuna, Ada County, Idaho, and amending the zoning map and directing the city engineer and city clerk and providing an effective date.
Make a motion that we, the waive 3 readings of ordinance 2024-15.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to waive the 3 readings. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-15.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for approval of the ordinance. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Nathan, would you poll the council?
Councilmember McPherson?
Yes.
Councilmember Biggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Laraway?
Yes.
Council President Bruce?
Yes.
And that motion carries. That is all we had on the agenda for the evening. Boys and Girls Club opened, and yesterday they had kids in there doing their thing, so.
Pretty
Haven't
awesome.
heard how that turned out yet, but I'm sure they're having a good time in the air conditioning, so.
It's a great building.
It's an awesome building, after 19 years in the making, it was good to finally actually be standing in something that was done, so. Other than that, be careful with fire out there. It seems to be easy to start fires, so. And that's all I have. Anybody else have anything you wanted to talk about? All right,
No, thank you all.
with that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.